Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We are here. We got some news to talk about in the NHL. We're going to start off with some pre-show stuff. Go ahead, Russ.
So today is the baseball trading deadline, and there are already people in the chat room that don't want to hear it, but you'll have to sit through this 4 or 5 minutes. Tough luck. Here's the way I'm looking at this day, though. Right now, I am looking at the New York Yankees squarely and saying Brian Cashman has already had a bad trading deadline. I don't think anything he does today can actually help the Yankees the way they needed to be helped to actually win the World Series. Because if you look at the Yankees, their bullpen's good enough to win the World Series, and their everyday lineup is good enough to win the World Series. Their starting staff is not even close to winning. And so they needed a number one or number two starter. They're not getting one today.
Well, and this is the thing, and I don't buy this as a viable way of winning a World Series, but this is the way that they may apparently go. They may go the way of Kansas City and try to overload their bullpen and basically say to their starters, give me 3 to 4 innings in the playoffs. I don't think that's going to work because Kansas City at least had a couple starters that went, like I think Cueto, and they had one other guy who went fairly deep against the Mets. Mm-hmm. You can't do that. And they would be gambling heavy on Severino coming back or Tanaka pitching better. And they need a starter. They've missed out on Bauer. I don't think they missed out on Stroman because apparently the Blue Jays were intent on not trading him to the Yankees. And that's
they did have a discussion. And
but they're not, Russ. They're not going to get one of the 10 best pitching prospects in the game for a guy with rental.
That's the problem right now. This is what it takes. If you're one of those teams that wants to win it, they pointed out on the MLB Network that like the last 4 or 5 winners have had a big day today.
Yeah.
And so if the Yankees don't, they may not win it. Now I'm going to ask Anthony a question. Okay. Anthony, how will you feel if the Chicago Cubs win it all and Cole Hamels is the reason they win it all? How will you feel today? Well,
congratulations, Cole.
I mean, the Phillies could have had him last year.
They had a chance at him last year, but again, to me, that's like water under the bridge at this point. They had their shot.
I don't know.
They had their shot at him already. They did. They had not shown any inclination to go for a veteran, a really good veteran pitcher. Whether it was last deadline, whether it's been this year, they had their chances. They could have gotten Keuchel easily and signed him to and it was if it was a multi-year deal, 2-3 years, okay, fine. I could see some hesitancy. He signed for 1 year with Atlanta. You're telling me you couldn't do 1 year? To me, I have more of a pit of my stomach bad feeling if the Atlanta Braves win the World Series and Dallas Keuchel's a reason why they win it.
But you know,
because you could have gotten him for money instead of costing you anything other than.
But look at the Keuchel situation with Atlanta, and he's an under 500 pitcher with an ERA close to 4.
He's at this moment. Like he could
right at this moment. I can only tell you what's at this moment. I can't put a friggin' soothsayer.
You got to remember, he didn't start the season, so this is in essence the start of his season. You know what I mean? Like he'll probably get better.
But I can only base the signing on the evidence up to this point. And right now, he's a middle of the rotation starter. He's not a difference maker. So, the criticism of the Yankees and the Phillies and other teams that were in on Keuchel that they didn't get him because they didn't want to spend extra money. Well, all they've gotten so far is a middle of the road starter. The Bumgarners, the
2-3 starter. The Phillies have 1-1.
Right.
And 4-4-5.
Yeah, how do you like Vargas? That's a beautiful.
We'll find out on Friday. He starts on Friday.
I mean, look, Vargas throws innings.
Vargas is good. I mean, but
that's not great.
Back to earth.
I feel bad for guys who have to interview Vargas after the game. Peter, I don't even want to hear from you. But the last day,
you know what? You could be outside doing stuff.
No, I understand. Peter.
About baseball.
You can play golf or shuffleboard in a minute. Last thing on the baseball is I just saw the MLB Network. Listen, I have no AC in my house, so if you want grumpy, I'll give you grumpy.
Wow, this explains everything right now. No wonder you're saying as much as you are.
Yeah. The last thing I just saw on the MLB Network, they were like, are the Mets flipping Marcus Stroman? I can tell you with 100% certainty that's not happening. Now, could they trade Noah Syndergaard? Sure, but you know what? Now it even seems like that's not going to happen. I think
MLB.com reported a half hour ago that they pulled him off the market.
Yeah, I think they're rolling with what they have, and they say that they're 6 games back. They think with these 4 starters they can do something, and I think that's what they're going with. And whether that's right or wrong, it's probably wrong, but that's what they're going with. So that's it. I'm done with the MLB deadline.
And let me just say this quickly before we start the show, and not baseball related, but movies related. I didn't see the movie, but I know people who have seen the movie. I'm not going to watch it until it comes on cable next year. But from what I've heard, the Tarantino movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a bust, is not good.
People are saying they like it. I've seen some posts, but I'm shocked at that.
Yeah, obviously I can hear that, and that's individual opinions. And it could be completely off base. I can only base it on when I see it. So I'm not going to waste $12 going to see it, because I'll just wait till it's on HBO.
You know what it is? Honestly, I think they are trying to prey on everybody's sense of nostalgia. Like, they showed 12 seconds of Bruce Lee. I don't need to see 12. There's no bigger Bruce Lee fan than me. I've seen every one of his movies, but showing me 12 seconds of him on how he intersects in the movie, I don't care. And
nothing says nostalgia like the Tate LaBianca murders. That So, but
let's move on.
I have to say this.
Uh-oh.
Not many previews get me excited to go see the movie anymore, because I worked in the working in the movie theaters for 10 years. The preview that popped this morning of the new Martin Scorsese movie looks unbelievable.
What's it called? I don't even know.
It's called The Irishman. It's about Jimmy Hoffa and his involvement with the mob. It's based on a book. It's De Niro, Pacino, Pesci, Harvey Keitel, written by Steven Zaillian, who's I think wrote Schindler's List and directed. What the heck was that great chess movie? Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Searching for Bobby Fischer, yeah.
Great, yeah, and directed by Scorsese. I cannot imagine that this movie is going to be a bust. It looks fantastic, and it was produced by Netflix, so it's going to be in the theaters and on Netflix in, I think, October. So
I'll watch it.
I can't wait for that one. All right. Well, let's just do the. Okay.
That's fine.
All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. Today is July 31st, Wednesday, July 31st, 2019.
I'm Peter. I'm Peter Tessier in beautiful downtown Vancouver. Sorry, it's not balmy here yet, Frank.
Going from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com, and it is T-minus 7 hours until the Sarah McLachlan concert in Lewiston, New York, which I will give a review of tomorrow morning on the show. Okay, let's talk about hockey, and let's talk about what we didn't talk about yesterday, because someone on the show pressed the stop button.
The nuclear option.
It was that bad, huh?
Yeah. Well, it was a mistake. We know it was a mistake. But the trade of Nikita Gusev, whose rights were owned by the Vegas Golden Knights, but they did not have the cap space to sign him. He was traded, and after giving the Devils the permission to talk to Gusev's agent to find out what he was looking for in terms of a contract, the Devils traded a second-round pick in 2021 and a third-round pick in 2020 to Vegas for Gusev, and the Devils signed him to a 2-year, $9 million contract. Now, Russ, I think the interesting thing here is the talk after the deal about the comparative between like him and Panarin and all this stuff. It's like, I mean, let's cool the jets here and just see what this guy does before we make comparisons to Panarin.
Yeah, don't ever compare to Panarin. That's like a very bad thing to do. As we know, I mean, I've talked about comparing guys, but also Devils fans should not act like a second and a third is giving up nothing. Plus, they're giving this guy like $5 million up front, something like that.
Yeah. Which,
again, is a problem for an unproven player. Now, can he skate? Does he have great passing ability? Can he score? Yeah, he can do those things. But, back in the day, the Flyers thought that Medvedev could do those things too. And then when he tried to fit in a North America system in a lineup, it didn't work. that could happen here too, because there was one thing that I did notice about Gusev is his puck security. Like, he's pretty freewheeling in the KHL. I don't think he could be as freewheeling in the NHL. So I think he's going to have to draw back a little bit, and we'll see how he is at that point. But this isn't a no-risk move. This is $4.5 million for a couple of years. This is a couple of draft picks and upfront money. Yes, the Devils have it to spend,
Right.
but there are some Devils fans that are acting like, yeah, they've got the next Panarin, and it's like, you got to slow that down.
And
Yeah,
Peter,
and there's risk here for a bunch of reasons too. Is that what are the Devils right now?
Right.
Like, what kind of team are they? They've done a lot of change, and they've got to build something. And what they build is probably not going to be centered around Gusev. He's an auxiliary part. He's an accessory piece that could be very good for them.
right?
But this offense isn't being built around him.
No,
He's not the key. He's not the one driving it.
which you could say takes a little bit of the pressure off. But I mean, we talked about this off air, Anthony, me and Russ did, about everything is being sold in terms of the improvements made by the Devils as a narrative to get Taylor Hall re-signed, to convince him to sign an extension. I even heard something to the effect that I think Ray Shero visited Hall. He's from the near Toronto, and to talk to him about contract extension. At a certain point before the season starts, you sort of have to get an answer from him about what's going on. It can't all be about Taylor Hall. It has to be about the improvement overall of the club. And I think that narrative is getting a bit tired.
It is at this point. I mean, again, New Jersey's and Pete's onto something in terms of for the celebration of what the Devils have done this offseason, in terms of the movement that they've made, big hits. Obviously, we were there for the draft, and obviously the one that was expected and the one that wasn't, and with Subban being added. I'm not 100% sure what their team identity is yet. I mean, most teams will tell you that's true. Even you still have to kind of put those things into place to begin with.
Sure.
But to Hall, he is the king piece in this circumstance, where again, you put him in there, and it doesn't put, as Pete would have said in this circumstance, not as much of weight on Gusev to try to produce offensively. And to Russ, and again, I do think the Devils need him because again, if they are going to make a playoff push this year, you need that piece that's going to help put you over the top for that in that circumstance. I think Hall can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the more important thing for the Devils moving forward and improving and having a better chance at making the playoffs is the growth of Hischier, is guys like Bratt bouncing back to more like what he did as a rookie, to Boquist being a contributor. And if Gusev scores 70 points, he scores 70 points. I don't think that their fate is inextricably tied to Gusev having phenomenal numbers. But Russ, we talked about this again off air. I think probably the most important thing for the Devils is their goaltending, and is Mackenzie Blackwood being a legitimate number one. And that could happen. He's a good young goaltender, but it's asking him a lot to jump from 21 games to, say, 50 to 55.
It is. He did play a lot of games in juniors and played a fair amount in the time in the AHL. So he at least has had a nice little arc up to it where, it's not like a goalie coming over from, I don't know, let's say college and hasn't played that many games. So he at least has that, and he's very strong physically. So I think those two things bode well for him. He is good mentally too. So I think there is a possibility of that. There's snarky stuff going on in the chat room. Like, there's a lot of talent for a $5 ticket. PK Subban being on your team alone will raise the ticket prices on the secondary market, because he will be so entertaining that they will fill in a lot more fans than they have in the last few years. So I think people with that same old opinion about the Devils are going to change that real quick when they see the effect that he'll have on the marketplace.
I wonder if PK is going to wear that robe on the ice, the Ric Flair robe, because that would definitely attract attention. Now, interesting little side note here. Two things actually. One on Gusev. He's a UFA after the 2-year deal. So he sets himself up now. He's 27 now. This is not a Panarin in terms of, because Panarin came over I think at 25 and he signed as a UFA.
Yeah, 24, 25, something like that.
Right. So I mean, Gusev is going to be further along. But you look at the numbers that he put up in the KHL, and you can always try to use some sort of calculator and determine whether this translates into being an effective NHL player. But in the last 3 years, he had 71, 62, and 82 points in the last three KHL seasons. So that might be an indicator of what he's going to do, but you never know.
The other problem in that league is, was he on a super team? Was he just on a regular team? Because if you're on a bad team in the KHL and you score that many points, you've really done something. Because the bad KHL teams are bad.
You're playing for St. Petersburg. You're on one of the best teams in the league. So
yeah. That makes a difference too.
Anthony, can you log off and log back on because I'm getting weird feedback? Okay. Yeah, it was from
here. Yeah, that was it. That does make a difference too if you're playing on a super team like that.
Now the other thing, Russ, was the fact that Arthur Staple from The Athletic reported that the Islanders were in on Gusev, but they balked at the amount of his contract demand, how much he wanted on a 2-year deal. And again, I'm sorry, maybe it's getting tiring in terms of me banging the same drum when it comes to the Islanders, but that organization has to be questioned for their fiscal tightness, because this is once again another example of, if you want a player, you go out and you spend for that player.
Yeah, this just seems like a narrative that we keep hearing over and over again, like, hey, the Islanders are in on it. It's almost like Arthur Staple feels like he has to report that. So somebody gives him a text and says, yeah, we were in on them. Nobody ever says how deep. Nobody ever says for how many years. And so, I am getting tired of hearing about it too, because it doesn't matter if you were in on them. Everybody can make a phone call and be in on them. The idea is to actually get them. And if you don't get anybody, then it doesn't matter whether you were in on them or not.
Right. We'll get our guys back hopefully in the next minute or so. I just sent them another invite.
They're all gone. They all left.
Yeah. they hated our commentary.
They're all fourth liners, man.
Now tied in with the Devils.
By the way, the $5 remark was for the summer showcase, not the Devils. I didn't read enough lines, so.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure what it was in reference to.
Let me get Peter in on this. Peter, again, doesn't it feel like Arthur Staple just gets this obligatory text that says, yeah, the Islanders were in on it, but we never get any facts about it. We never get how close. We never get a contract idea of what they were willing to spend. So how believable is this to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not. And it's constant. We always hear, oh, the Islanders are close. The Islanders were, nudging around. But we never know what that is. There's no context to it. There's no context of, no one else is reporting it either, right? It's just, right. They had an interest in the player, or they tried to acquire the player, but yeah, it's just leaky PR methods, right? Give the fans some hope, keep them interested, leak a few things out. Oh yeah, we took a shot. One day it'd be interesting if someone came out and said never had a conversation with the Islanders or XYZ team, right? It'd be really funny to hear that. But the fraternity of GMs and stuff like that'll never happen.
No, and if a reporter did that, he'd be ostracized because he'd be I mean, you're revealing things that would I think get you in trouble. Okay, tied in with the Devils was the agreement this morning to a 3-year extension avoiding arbitration with Will Butcher. 3 years, $3.73 million AAV. It walks him to free agency. 3 years, he'll be 27 when he hits the open market. First 2 seasons, Russ, 44 and 30 points. A little bit of a drop-off last year, but, I mean, the Devils were one of the worst teams in the league, so that's understandable. Yeah. Coming out of college, coming out of Denver, this was one of the best defensemen in college hockey, and he played very well coming in, and I think this is a good sort of compromise deal. He gets his money, but he doesn't get a ridiculous amount. I think. What do you think? What do you think of this one?
No, this is a good deal. I mean, Butcher is a valuable guy. He'll play second power play. He gets points 5-on-5 as well. Good skater. He's better defensively than I think some people gave him credit for. And he, you know what? And even though he's 27, he is still improving. Because you got to remember, when you go to college for a certain amount of years, you're coming out, you're 22, 3, 4. So there is still something for him to learn too. So I like this deal for him. And the fact that he gets some security is good for him. And no, he didn't deserve any more money than this, but they could get great value out of this if he goes back to about 45 points.
And Peter, they have money that's going to get opened up in the next year or so. Andy Green's contract expires at the end of this year. He's 36, so this is probably the last year, unless he, signs a much lower contract. This is probably the last year he makes big money. They also have Sami Vatanen making a little under 5 as a UFA. It's going to take a lot more. He was making 4.875. It's probably going to take at least 6 to get him on a new deal. So I guess I think it makes good sense to get Butcher locked up when you can for a reasonable figure.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of those types of deals that GMs want to make in advance, so they give themselves some leeway. Maybe they have to do a little bit overpay now, but it gives them some stability, and they know what they're working with as things come along. And you just outlined the two big ones that they're going to free up money with or have to deal with, and Vatanen and Green. And I mean, I'd be surprised if Green's making near $5 million in this next deal at age 37 when it comes around. But Vatanen will definitely be the interesting one for the Devils, seeing as he's UFA, and he at that point will be he'll still be 28. He's 29 next June. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's going to be his last chance to cash in. It'll be fascinating to see how he sort of approaches that deal, and probably the same way Taylor Hall does it.
I'll tell you what, I think Vatanen they're going to lose, because with Ty Smith, he's either going to make the team this year or next year.
Right.
And I think he'll replace Vatanen. I don't even think the Devils will make Vatanen a big offer. I really don't.
Well, I mean, they have Severson locked up at 4.1 for another 4 years. Yeah. They re-upped Connor Carrick, who's a bottom pairing guy, and I think it could be a decent bottom pairing guy. Mirko Mueller at 1.4. So I mean, they could sign Vatanen. They have plenty of cap space.
They could. I could also see them potentially flip. I could see them if they feel solid, especially if Ty Smith comes along. I could easily see them flipping him to a team in need for things that they need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if Vatanen hits the market, I mean, we already know that guys like Pietrangelo and Spurgeon and Barry are all in the market this year. And the question is, what these guys are going to make. We don't know based on what the cap might be next year. I mean, if you factor in what the cap will go up next year, and the fact that the PA is probably not going to kick in the escalator to avoid more escrow, it's probably not going to go up more than a couple $1 million. If that's the case, then I mean, the Devils are one of the teams that have the space, but it all depends on what they have to re-sign Hall for, and how much they have budget, how much Josh Harris will allow them to have in terms of a budget. I mean, they've made investments with Subban this year and Simmons, but I think it depends on how successful they are, whether they re-up Vatanen or not.
I agree, and when you mentioned Spurgeon, I think he could get traded before the season starts. I mean, he hasn't signed on with the Wild. Apparently, they tried to extend him, and he didn't. And I think when this new GM comes in, that could be the move that happens right away to clear some cap space and give them flexibility and maybe picking up another player. So that's why I told fans early on that this is a different kind of summer than most. With all these guys hanging out there, you don't want your team to be capped out right now, waiting for the season to start, because there's other possibilities out here that last minute some teams are going to have to dish off some guys or want to dish off some guys, and then your team could be there to get that. So that's why having some cap space now is important.
And you know what, Russ, that sort of feeds into what we heard. It was over the weekend that Mike Russo from the Athletic was doing a podcast in Minnesota and was mentioned Jake Gardner, who is still unsigned, and intimated that Gardner has a hold on a second.
Bat phone.
Yeah, the bat phone. Commissioner Gordon calling. That Gardner has a handshake deal with a team out there on a long-term contract, but that team has a high-priced defenseman that they would have to move out for Gardner to get signed. Now, we could speculate who, I posted something yesterday, and I said, well, Buffalo makes sense because of Ristolainen, or even Minnesota with Spurgeon. But if it was Minnesota and Paul Fenton got fired, then that handshake is worth nothing because the guy who agreed to the handshake deal is gone. So Gardner's sort of out there, and teams, the ability to move out a big contract on August 1 is significantly difficult because these teams just don't have the cap space right now.
Yeah, I really feel like Gardner is going to end up signing a 1-year deal to some contender, and he's going to have to prove himself all over again. I just feel like that's the way it's going to end up.
Well, I put myself out on a limb, and if I'm wrong, I will make a mea culpa. But I said it's a fantasy to think that Jake Gardner is coming back to Toronto, even on a 1-year deal, because they simply just don't have the cap space with the Marner situation. If he has to take a 1-year deal, I made the comparison to Cody Franzen a few years ago. You remember Cody Franzen was supposed to be one of the big guys in free agency, and then in the end he signed, I think, in late July or August with Buffalo for 2 years, and he never got anywhere close to the money that people thought he was going to get. And
the analytics darling, I remember.
And he still is.
Everybody loves him,
even though defensively he's got all the maneuverability of a battleship.
Yeah, and Jake Gardner is like a PT boat in terms of mobility, but still, and the analytics crowd loves him. But if you watch him, he is a horrible defensive defenseman. His best defense is him possessing the puck and carrying it up the ice. Those players, and you put together the problem is that he has a back issue that a lot of people got scared off from. That does not that prevents him from, I think, getting a long-term contract, but we'll see what ends up happening with him. Now the other signing was Sam Girard, and this took everybody by surprise because he's got 1 more year left on his ELC, and the Avalanche signed him to a 7-year extension. So that doesn't kick in until next July. For $5 million AAV, $35 million total. They buy 3 years of unrestricted years on this deal. But Russ, I'll start with you first. 20 and 27 points in his first 2 years. There's not I'm confident that he's going to be a good defenseman. I don't think this is a bad deal. I think it's very proactive, but there are some who are criticizing it that say, where are you going here? You're giving $5 million to a guy who hasn't really proved he's worth $5 million.
Okay, so let's get down to this. Way back, going into his draft year, I liked him. I had him highly ranked. I heard the same stuff. Then it's like, after that, it's like, well, he's just playing in juniors. How's he ever going to play in the NHL at his size? And he weighs 162 pounds, which he actually was less than that when he started in the NHL. He was about 155, 157. How's he going to do it? Well, he's done it. And the reason he's done it is because he's fast, he's great with puck possession, and he has great edge work. And right now, going forward, those are the things that succeed in this league. As it gets less and less physical, a guy like him is going to shine. So I could see him getting even more points. I like the signing. I just think it was smart for them to get him. It's smart for them to lock him up because end of the day, people don't realize his puck retrieval is really good. He doesn't have to be out there banging and crashing, but he gets to the puck first. And a lot of times when he can get to the puck first and get it to McKinnon or get it to Rantanen and it goes the other way, that's successful.
And I made my comparison of Girard before the show with Mike. I mentioned the fact that there's things about his game that definitely remind me a little bit of Peter Svoboda in some ways, especially from the puck retrieval and being able to turn the puck up the ice.
Yep.
So, $5 million at $5 million a season, you're buying 3 years of his UFA status, Hal. I think we'll look back on that contract. Now, again, we do need a little more. We probably need to bump it up to at least into the 40-point range probably here. And then you start to say, before we start to say, wow, that was a slam dunk great deal.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Peter, I couldn't pull an example from the Jets, but say for example Quinn Hughes, who burned a year of ELC last year by playing late in the season. Say he has a 40-point year. If I was Vancouver, I would offer him a 7-year deal and go into the unrestricted years. I'd try to get him locked up for as long as I can, because in the end, I think you save money if you pay him. You pay him now if you're confident that this guy is going to be as part of your top 4 for the most of the next decade. You be proactive and you sign that guy long term, even if you have to spend money that you might save a little on a bridge deal, because if the guy keeps growing, then you'll be paying for it at the back end.
Yeah, and yet, especially if you're willing just to burn the end of an entry level year deal at the end of a season, in a meaningless season for the Canucks, you might as well go all in on them, because you've already wasted a year technically. This is the thing where I think the analytics has to be your best friend, and you have to use things like this, because this is the stuff that helps you make these decisions so that you don't overpay at the wrong time. That's what they're for. They're not always for to announce that this player is the best player ever and that you should always be paying, you should get this guy. It's also to help you figure out when you should be offering contracts, how much you should be valuing them, and what's the likelihood of this contract succeeding in your favor. It's just being efficient is all it is. Like, let's rename analytics efficiency. But Quinn, Hughes is a great example of that. And there's you look at players who have come right out of their ELCs. Like, I use the Justin example, Mark Scheifele. He's on one of the best deals in the entire NHL.
Right.
Lock him up. Nick Ehlers, same thing. And probably the best deal in the NHL right now is playing for the Philadelphia Flyers and Sean Couturier. That is probably the best contract in the NHL, and it's not even close.
Yeah.
And you got to be bold, and but you got to do your homework, you got to do your research, and you should do those things. That's the efficiency model teams want.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something, Mike. With Quinn Hughes, I think he's going to have at least 50 points this year on that power play.
Yep.
Here's the funny thing. When he came up last year and he had 3 points in 5 games, he only took 6 shots. Quinn Hughes is going to take like 150 to 200 shots this year.
Right.
And he's going to get a lot of them on the power play. He is going to get points for that team.
And after July 1 next year, if you sign him to a 6-year, $36 million contract, $6 million a year, you're stealing money, because you don't think after another year like that, if he hits 50 points this year and then does the same thing next year, he's not going to be asking for what Charlie McAvoy is asking for Boston. You have to, as a general manager, I think one of the weapons that you can use is evaluating talent and being proactive in terms of signing a player. And I'm going to write in the next after we get done with the show, I think Kyle Dubas should be proactive with a guy like Travis Dermott. I think Travis Dermott, they are projecting him to be a top 4 defenseman. He hasn't had, he had an okay first half season. Last year he played, I thought, pretty well, but his points were not big. He's coming off an injury. This would be the perfect time for the Leafs to say, we believe in you. We'll give you a 6 or 7 year deal at $4.5 million. And lock him up. And if you get him at that amount and he starts to be the defenseman that you think he's going to be, meaning somebody who scores 30, 35, up to 40 points, then you've got yourself a great deal. And that's what gives you cap flexibility down the line.
You have to have some guts, though. You have to have some guts. Like, if you look at a player and everybody in the organization, like let's say it is Dermott or let's say it's Hughes, and everybody in the organization looks at that and says, you know what, we have identified this guy as, and let's say they say, hey, Quinn Hughes is our number 1 defenseman for the next 10 years. We already know this halfway during the season. Then you go make that deal. You don't even worry about anything else.
Yeah.
You don't worry about injury. You don't worry about anything else because you can't control that. But if you think that that's your player, you got to be aggressive these days because otherwise it'll come back and bite you.
And Buffalo should do the same thing with Rasmus Dahlin.
I would have signed him already this summer.
Well, you can't. He was only one year.
Oh, right.
Wait until next July. But
you got to wait till July. Yeah.
Right. But that being said, next July 1, I'm talking to his agent and I'm saying, what do you want? We want to get this locked up long term. Do the same thing that you did with Eichel, because honestly, $10 million now on Eichel, who's one of the better, I'd say, one of the top 10 centers in the league. Mm-hmm. It's not a bargain, but it's cost effective. You telling me that $10 million is not going to be a bargain in 2 or 3 years with the if Eichel doesn't get hurt and he keeps improving. I think 10 million is going to be undervalued for him.
There's this weird thing where everybody likes to pick on Jack Eichel and say, I don't think he's that good. But every time you look up, Jack Eichel's had a better season than the one before. He had 82 points last year on a mediocre team, and that's why he will make this money. But I'm telling you, there are people out there that will say, oh, I don't love Jack Eichel, or he's soft, or he's this, or he's that. And it's like, I don't know. Guys had 24, 24, 25, 28 goals on not great teams.
Well,
what do you want out of this guy?
Well, that's the thing. It's like he pales in comparison to the guy who was picked first overall in his draft year, McDavid. He pales in comparison to the great number one American center in Austin Matthews. But that's not crime. He is a franchise level number one center. So, I think those criticisms of him are off base, and he could very easily score 90 points this year. So
just think about this. He took 303 shots. Imagine if there was somebody else to knock in some of those rebounds. Just imagine that, because he only had a 9.2 shooting percentage, but he took 303 shots.
Yeah. Now, updating on the Minnesota situation, after we signed off or after we were ejected yesterday, it came out that the Wild had received permission from the Flyers to talk to former GM Ron Hextall. Eck was right to point out, I guess, that Hextall, based on what happened with Fenton, might not be a good fit for Minnesota, but that was one of the first moves. And Anthony, you just tweeted me the link to Mike Russo's tweet from a few minutes ago that you'll like this, Russ. Carolina Hurricanes president and general manager Don Waddell is technically a free agent. His contract ended on June 30th. He has not been re-signed, so it would not surprise me one bit if the Wild tried to reach out.
Anthony, you've got to talk about this first, because I don't want to steal your thunder.
No. I'm the one who sent it.
All right. I want to say this.
On a tee.
What happens if he does go to the Wild and Carolina has no GM? Like, why would Carolina want to be in this position? Can any of you tell me that?
I please, the things that Dundon has done.
I mean,
so far, it's been puzzling.
I'm dumbfounded that he doesn't have a contract.
Yeah.
Like, this is akin to Office Space. Is Don Waddell just keep showing up and hope that a check comes? Did they move his desk to the basement? Like, I don't understand what's going on there.
The red Swingline stapler, the one with the hurricane logo on it.
They could have a.
Go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say they could have an agreement that you're under current numbers until we figure it out, and then go. Oops, I'm trying to talk. Yeah. I'm having weird internet troubles. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No. The whole Don Waddell thing is just goofy, right? Like, he could be working on last contract's numbers until they hammer something out, and maybe the whole Aho thing is made Dundon completely daft, and he doesn't know how to sign as president and GM. But it is bizarre. Like, it is bizarre, to say the least. And obviously he feels secure there because he's still coming to work.
And coincidentally, outside the window, there's a storm surge going on right now.
Thank you very much.
No, when I saw it, I was like, really? You haven't gotten your president GM signed. Do you not believe in what he's done?
I
don't know. He operates very interestingly, Tom Dundon. That's all. That's what I'm going to say at this point.
That's very diplomatic.
It's probably they just haven't determined the final numbers yet. However, this could, much like the offer sheet to Aho, this could goose things. Russo saying this could goose things along a little bit. It could goose things along for Waddell's contract.
Yeah, and
then could get Waddell in Minnesota, and then Carolina all of a sudden doesn't have a GM. It could.
Then they hire Hextall.
Yeah, no.
That would never happen. I'm going to go on record now and say there is no way Ron Hextall
Well, I know what would the first move would be if Don Waddell is hired as the Minnesota Wild general manager. He will trade Victor Rask again. Okay. Let's talk about the restricted free agents just briefly, just to say that right now there still has not been any movement on any of the non-arbitration eligible RFAs. Oh, by the way, I just have to mention this one. The Buffalo Sabres offer to an arbitration to goalie Linus Ullmark, who essentially at the end of the year was splitting duty with Carter Hutton. Ullmark's amount in arbitration was in the mid twos, I think 2.4 or 2.5. The Sabres offer in arbitration was $800,000.
Woof.
That's a big.
That's $100,000 over league minimum.
That means they're going to walk away from it.
Well, they haven't. I mean, they don't. I mean, they're not going to.
They'll rule on it. No goalie is going to make that little with NHL time, so they're going to probably say, I don't know, $2 million or 1.75, and Buffalo may walk away from it.
Well, I mean that would be shocking because he's gone from the presumptive number one for at least the next couple years until Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen gets ready.
Yeah, but isn't that offer a vote of no confidence, really?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah,
it is.
I mean it's dumbfounding. I think what they're trying. I mean, they're basically yielding to the arbitration award that it's going to be closer to what.
Yeah.
Right. So they lowballed, and I think I think optically it's really bad, but I was just struck by it. It was really I know he didn't play well down the stretch, but I think he's better than $800,000. But okay, just talking about the RFAs, defensively, Werenski, Provorov, and McAvoy are still unsigned, and we still have Connor, Laine, Kachuk, Besser, Rantanen, Marner, Travis Konechny, all the Matthew Kachuk, if I didn't mention him, all these guys still unsigned. There really has not been a crack in terms of one of these players signed. I'm just gonna go around the board. Which one do you think would be the first one? Because I mean a Braden Point is the one I didn't mention. Somebody said. I get the feeling based on what happened with Vasilevsky this week and the trade of Callahan, Anthony, that there's going to be something with Point.
I think so. There's going to be something. I think Point's probably going to be. I think when they made that move, the first word out of my mouth was, "This is space for Point." Basically, this is it may take a little bit more working and doing, maybe a few more, maybe something else that needs to happen. But they could easily also, I think, at this point, they probably have what they need in order to get it done. They probably just have to work out a lot of contractual language.
Now, Peter, I'm under the theory that the Jets are going to want to get one of the two done earlier. That there's not going to be something where they're going to get them both done at the same day or both announced in the same day. That they would want to get, if they think there's a better chance to get Connor locked up on a long-term deal rather than Laine. Laine seems to be more, I'd say, hard in his stance, that they'd want to get one of them done quickly and then concentrate on the other one. What do you think?
No one really knows what the hell is going on here. There's been so much random speculation of nothing other than it's believed Laine is somehow unhappy with his role in the team and would be more open to a shorter deal as opposed to a longer one. And that's come from Elliot Friedman spitballing on the 31 Thoughts podcast. Other than that, it's basically no one has any idea. I think the Jets want to lock both up. They both scored at prolific rates at a young age, and every player who's done that for the Jets has been locked up as an RFA coming out of entry-level deal, and it started with Evander Kane. I don't see why Kevin Cheveldayoff changed his tactics now. Basically, the Jets have about $15 million in cap space to sign those two, plus add a couple other guys in if they need to. So, are you getting both for $15 million?
That's assuming both of them sign long-term deals.
Yeah, probably.
One might be a bridge, one might be a long-term deal.
Yeah. I think if you bridge them both, you'll get them under 15 million easy.
Yeah.
I think if you long term it and you think 5 to 7 years or 5 to 8 years, you're not a chance. So something's going to give here. It's just a matter of eventually Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to have to give an update on what's going on with these contracts.
You know what? Maybe.
And that'll probably start happening for the next 2 weeks. And either he's going to have good news or no news.
Maybe they should bridge Laine. For all we know, he could turn into Chris Gratton. Like, you don't know.
Jeez. Well, I mean, the other two teams.
Wow.
Mike, put that one in. That is the quote of the show.
Change the title. Laine could be Chris Gratton.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Pete's like this right now.
Yeah. I don't even know what to do with that.
For Jets fans, I did not. No, but that stance I think has to be the case with Don Sweeney in Boston and with Chuck Fletcher in Philadelphia, because Sweeney's got Carlo and McAvoy, and obviously Carlo's going to cost a lot less than McAvoy, but you still have two defensemen who are RFAs who are not in arbitration eligible, so they could be out there for a while, and you'd probably want to get one of them done before the other.
You just want to get both of them done. They can't go into the season without either one of them, to be honest.
Well, what do you think about the Philadelphia situation with Konechny and Provorov? I would think it would be easier to get Konechny on a shorter term deal.
I think in all likelihood that's probably what's going to happen. I think Brooks and I have held to our number, which we think it's going to be 3 years, and in the $4 to a little bit above $4 million range.
Right.
I think that's exactly what Konechny is, because again, they still have to figure out Travis in terms of him. He's still very much a work in progress, especially defensively.
Yeah.
So, of the two, I think he's certainly a bridge deal, and Provorov could very well be as well if they can't quite come to an agreement. And that's not optimal for Philadelphia, because I think they would prefer to have Provorov longer term, 6-7 years. But that's something they got to bandy about here.
And the one thing, and everybody get ready to take a drink, because I'm going to talk about Mitch Marner. I don't think that anybody, in terms of the other camps, the other agents, are going to be waiting around for Mitch Marner to set the market, because I think the signal has been sent by the Leafs and even by Marner's agent that this is going to go down to the wire. It could go down to the very beginning of training camp. It could even go into the season, and the Leafs plan for that with the Clarkson deal, so they'd have flexibility after October 1st. But I don't think that this entire class of RFAs is going to sit around and wait for Mitch Marner and Darren Ferris to get off their ass and sign a deal with the Leafs. I don't think it's the case. So maybe we'll see.
We have so many of them at this point. Somebody's going to get the itch to want to get in play. Everybody's got different. You can toe the PA line up to a point,
right?
But eventually, you gotta. You're going to get to the point where you're going to itch to play, and you don't want to. You don't want to be left without a chair.
We'll take some questions in the chat. I just wanted to touch on this. One of the Vegas sites did an over/under for some of the teams. And it's always interesting to just look at the amounts that they had. Tampa Bay, who led the league last year, with their over under is 108.5 points this year. If I'll just speak for myself, and I'm not advocating you go out and bet this, but if I was going to bet based on what they brought back pretty much the same team, I would bet the over on the Lightning on that one. What do you guys think?
What was the point number?
108.5.
I'm going to go under.
So you think they're going to disappoint this year, or not do as well as they did?
Not do as well. I think they it's probably in their best interest to not have the same kind of regular season they did last year, based on what happened in the end. So I think
you're suggesting intentionally losing.
No, I'm suggesting that they go.
They're tanking, Anthony.
No,
it's a tiny tank. It's like a little tiny. It's a Jeep. It's not a tank.
I'm suggesting maybe play it a little differently this time, strategically.
It's a Humvee, Anthony.
Oh, that's kind of good.
Wow, it's a Humvee. The Vegas Golden Knights were at 96.5 last year. This year they're 100.5. Peter, what do you think on that one?
I think they're going to go over. I think they'll probably get up to 102, 104.
Okay. Anthony?
Give me the number again, Mike.
100.5.
It's tough in that division. I'm going to say slightly under.
Just because I believe it was Joe in the chat mentioned the Islanders and my bashing of them. I will bring up the Islanders, and they're
Wait, do I get to vote on Vegas or not?
Oh yeah, go. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Russ.
Vegas, I'm going to go slightly under because I just need to see how Fleury looks to start the year because he's starting to get a little long in the tooth mileage wise.
One other thing, since Russ is like I didn't get to talk about Vegas, I would like to talk about Tampa, and my number is
108.5.
108.5, slightly over.
Okay. Vegas, I had under.
Okay.
So I didn't include myself. So how about that? Just because Joe in the chat mentioned the Islanders and my disdain for them, I'll select the Islanders here and say that the friends in Las Vegas have equal disdain for the Islanders because they picked them at 93.5, and I think they'll be under that. So there, Joe. Ross, what do you think?
I think they've maybe got this one dead even. I think they've got it exactly right. So I'm going to say I take the line on that.
How can they get a half point, though?
Well, I thought it said 93.
No, 93.5.
All right. Well, I'm going to say
everything's a half. Everything's a half. So
I'll say slightly under that. I'll go with the 93.
Peter?
Sorry, what was the back end on that?
Islanders over-under is 93.5.
I'm going to say they go over.
Okay.
94. I think 94 is an easy target.
Anthony, I'll look by you.
I'll compare with Pete.
Okay. And the final one, of course, we have to talk. Well, no, I will not.
Of course, Mike.
No. I'm not going to. The Montreal Canadiens.
Oh.
The Montreal Canadiens last year were at 80.5, and they went way over. They had 96 points. This year,
by the way, which does show that of all the sports, Vegas does know the least about hockey. Because if you ever look at the lines at the beginning of the year, and then the middle of the year, they change drastically.
They got a franchise there. I'm starting to think that maybe there's a little more buy-in now.
Yeah, but you know what? They looked at Montreal at the beginning of the year without Shea Weber, not knowing when he was gonna come back, and I think that amount was understandable. I probably would have bet over because I thought that Carey Price would get them enough points, and 80.5 is like 15 to 16 points out of the playoffs. They have Montreal at 88.5 this year. Anthony, what do you think?
Under.
Okay. Peter. 88.5 for the Canadiens.
Over.
Okay. Russ?
I am going to say over.
Okay. I'm going to say slightly over, but I don't think they're. I think they're locked into fifth in the Atlantic. They're not going to beat out Boston, Toronto, Tampa, or Florida. So I can't see them getting much more over 90, maybe 91 points, but they'll just beat it. All right. Russ, any questions in the chat? And yes, just to in another sport, but somebody who was very notable. Nick Bonacani, the former linebacker for the Miami Dolphins. Most people my age remember him more for being the co-host on HBO's Inside the NFL, which at the time was like the only way that you could see highlights, even though it was 4 days afterward.
Yeah, I got to tell you,
you got perspective. I thought the problem is you had at least a few days to sort of think about what you saw instead of immediately reacting. So there was a benefit to having that.
Yeah, no, true. I watched the Dolphins' perfect season. As a Jet fan, I obviously hated the Dolphins. Yes. But I respected Bonacani. I mean, he was just a fearless player. He really was. He was a tremendous player. And that defense was just one of the more brutal defenses of all time, the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, and there was a documentary on HBO that if anybody's got HBO on demand, they could go and see it. It was I think done about 6 months ago, and it was about his life and what he did in terms of leveraging his influence after his son Mark got paralyzed from the neck down, the Miami Project. Yeah. I mean, I give him all the credit in the world because the advances that were made in terms of neck injuries and paralysis by the Miami Project was all done by Nick Bonacani getting involved and using his influence, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. So, okay, Russ, any questions in the chat?
Yeah, so Jonas Felix asked, Russ, I'm curious how a player like Emil Bemstrom was available in the 4th round. Solid junior numbers in Sweden before the draft, no SHL time. Seems like he could step in and score 20, 25 goals. Yeah, he probably will be on my list for a college finalist. Yeah. I think he can walk in and score 20 to 30. How he got to the 4th round, he's not the biggest guy. He was skinny. I think that's how a lot of guys do it. I mean, that's, again, when teams have a board and they're going strictly off that board,
right?
There are teams that don't have a guy like that. Even though they do go over there and scout, if their European scout doesn't really love him, they say, he was 5'10", he was about probably 165 pounds at the time of the draft. And he probably, they probably thought, you know what, we've got 2 or 3 other guys that we like better. So then a guy like that slips and catches fire. Like it happens all the time.
And the big thing is he's going to have the opportunity because of all the guys like Duchesne, Zingle, and Panarin that left. And Peter, I know the same question has come up about Pettersson, how he slipped, I think, 5th overall in that draft based on what kind of star he is right now. When you're a smaller player, that prejudice is still in this league that they're going to overlook you a little bit.
Absolutely. Size matters for the wrong reasons in the NHL still. And you know what? It's going to probably be a little more exemplified given who won the Stanley Cup this year and some of the players they had and the roles they played. And that's the NHL is we've always said it's a copycat league. We've always said it's a league of trends. And we're going to go back to this trend of, or at least a belief that maybe we'll see a trend going towards these harder nosed players. But, just because a team like Calgary or someone else who has some smaller skilled players didn't make it doesn't mean that a harder nosed, larger team like St. Louis is going to make it every year. A lot has to go right. And the St. Louis Blues story is incredible. But is it a reproducible story? Is it reproducible next year? I don't know about that.
Well,
but you know what? They don't care anymore either, and neither should NHL GMs. It's a fresh start. Build your team. Build to win the best way you can, not by doing something that's going to maybe take 3 years to enact because you can't get all the types of players you want immediately.
Well, so somebody posted online a list of the analytics departments and the people hired for analytics in the NHL. And, Toronto had one of the bigger ones in their teams. They have 3 or 4 or 5 people. And under St. Louis, they had NA. They had none. They had nobody assigned for analytics, which was interesting. But go ahead, Peter. Go ahead, Russ. Any questions?
It still doesn't mean they didn't have an intern.
No, absolutely. And
right.
And those lists.
Uh-oh. Go ahead, Peter. You blocked out for a second. We may have lost him again.
Yeah.
All right. Russ.
Right. But yeah, it doesn't mean they didn't have an intern. All right, we'll go to the next question.
Yeah.
Thomas asks, Corey Schneider's the big question mark. Will he bounce back or not? I don't think he's bouncing back to being a number one. He at least bounced back enough to stay in the league. Because for a little while, it looked like he wasn't even good enough to do that. Again, goalies are, they're risky. And at the time, most of us felt like when Lou gave Corey Schneider, made the trade, gave him that contract, it was probably going to be a good contract. And now it might be a tough contract the next few years, but he's going to probably be a high-priced backup. That's the way I see him.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, I think it's more going to be on Blackwood's shoulders than Schneider's shoulders. I mean, if they can get 30 to 35 games out of Schneider and he's respectable, I think
you basically have kind of a Brian Elliott situation from a few years back, potentially, at best scenario, in terms of being a serviceable goaltender who can give you decent performances. It stretches.
I think that's being kind because at least Elliott had hot streaks where he was unbeatable for times. Schneider's streak of losing, what was it? A year and a half between victories or something like that? It was something ridiculous like that. For somebody who was
the best case scenario.
Yeah. Even the Anthony Young of hockey, he was.
Jose De Leon, there you go.
Esmir has an interesting thing. He posts that the Devils are being written off, yet the Rangers, who are in a similar position, and they're considered contenders. Okay, let me first say this year there will be a massive fight all year long between Devils fans and Rangers fans. It is reignited. It's already started, and it's not going to stop. And so the reason that some people or some outlets look at the Rangers as more of a contender is because they're more set in goal. They have Lundqvist and Georgiev.
Yeah.
Lundqvist had a really good first half, probably good 3/4 of the season. Georgiev finished strong. So that tandem is better than what the Devils have to start the season. Now, if the Devils get any kind of goaltending, they probably are a better team. But the Rangers have a little bit of better goaltending. They've got more scoring now, definitely more scoring than the Devils. Their questions will be up the middle and on the blue line. But I think even their blue line is really improved. So may not be perfect, though. So that's where that's coming from. All right.
Yeah, I think that's the case, and I also think that you had so many players with the Devils had bad years last year. Hall had the injury. He sure did okay, but he took a step back from his rookie year. Bratt didn't play as well. I think people are more confident that the players on the Rangers will progress, and obviously Panarin coming in, that he's going to score the way he scored with Columbus last year. I mean, I think there's more confidence in that, and they add Trouba on defense, and I don't think they're better. I just think that there's less uncertainty with the Rangers and the players that they have.
Fox will probably be will figure into.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out.
But there's not a lot of big. There's not.
My concern with the Rangers, as Russ said, my concern with the Rangers primarily is down the middle.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of pressure on Fox because at least they have Shea and Trouba,
right,
and Shattenkirk and Stahl, and he's going to be on the bottom pairing probably to start the season.
Yeah, he will.
Yeah,
he will. Fallen asks if Hall doesn't sign, should the Devils trade him then? Yes.
Yeah.
I would take Taylor Hall. I would tell them if I'm the team, we're giving you till Christmas.
Right.
By Christmas, if you don't like what you see, we're going to trade you. We don't care what kind of season we're having. We have Jack Hughes. We have these other guys. We have to get something back for you. We've set everything up for you here. We've went out and gotten a lot of players here. We hope that you want to stay, but if you don't want to stay, we're trading you. That's the way I would handle it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's about right. Give him till January 1st. If we don't have a deal by then, even if we're in the playoffs, even if we're contending for a playoff spot, we cannot have a player, a former MVP, just walk away for nothing. No. You have to get something, and you will get teams that are contenders that could fit his salary and that have lots of young assets. They could get a boatload for him at the trade. If Tampa Bay is looking for one piece at the trade deadline and they've got all the young guys that they have in their organization, why, I'm sure that Brisebois would make a nice offer, and I'm sure there are other teams like that would do the same thing. So if I don't have him signed, he's gone.
Yeah. John Murphy asked, "What do we think of the Sam Girard deal?" John, listen to the beginning of the show. Just go back and listen. We talked about it for a while.
About 20 minutes in.
Yeah. Let's see.
Funky Cold Zadina, I do not. I like gray sweaters, but I don't think the Leafs have one.
Joe has asked, Russ, what do you think the Rangers do to get cap compliant? Yeah, today's the day. I think Brendan Smith is getting bought out.
Yep.
I think that's what they're doing, and then they'll trade either Nemestikov or Strome. They have been getting calls on Strome now, and I guess that's simply because if they're not getting any action on Nemestikov, they may have to get rid of Strome whether they want to or not. But again, even if they lose Ryan Strome, you got to remember Kravtsov is a guy that's not even being talked about yet that is going to start the season with him along with Kakko, right? Kakko's going to have a lot of hype going into the season. Kravtsov's really going to sort of not have any hype at all. And if he is half the player I think he is, he could be pretty effective right out of the gate. So will he play center? I don't know. Probably not. But the idea is they'll lose one of those two and the other guy will play center. That's what's going to happen. And I still think they're going to have to tell Kreider to just sort of wait for a minute and let everything settle, and then they'll start talking extension with him. And Kreider will he's not one of those guys that, well, when the season starts, I'm not going to talk extension. He really likes it there, so I don't think he's going to be like that.
Well, Nemestikov has 1 year left at $4 million, and he's a UFA. Strome is at 3.1. They're the same age, 26 years old, and Strome is arbitration eligible after this year. And he played well.
He did
in that trade.
But at some point, you know, if you have to clear those cap dollars and you're not getting any action on Nemestikov, then you might have to trade Strome. Like, you may not have a choice there.
Right. And what they also have to be concerned about, Russ, and I know this well from the Leaf situation, if Kakko hits his bonuses, he's not a $925,000 player. He's got all the Schedule A and Schedule B bonuses. So next year, his cap hit's could be upwards of $3 million with bonuses.
Funky Cold Zadina's going to have a bad summer because he's still got a problem with. He said that he feels like Kenny Holland, rated Evan Bouchard over Hughes and never got Quinn Hughes, and this is going to scar him for life. It seems like. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, Bouchard's a good player. I like Quinn Hughes better, but that doesn't mean that's.
Bouchard's got a bit. I've said this before, and I know I keep going back to 90s Flyers here. I apologize, but reminds me a little bit of Eric. There's a little bit of Eric Desjardins in his game, I think. Yeah, it's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna have the top end offensive ability that Quinn Hughes is gonna have.
Yeah,
but he's gonna be a productive.
Yeah,
player.
and he'll be more physical. He's a bigger kid.
Right. Yeah.
Unless I'm forgetting a trade. I mean, Hughes was taken 7th overall and Bouchard was taken 10th overall. So how the heck, unless Edmonton traded back, how the heck were they going to get Quinn Hughes?
I don't know. Maybe this is something's been leaked out, or he feels like that's how they had him rated. Or
unless he's talking about Detroit getting Hughes at 6 instead of Zadina. But Zadina fell. Everybody thought Zadina was going to go 3.
Yeah, I think that's more what he's talking about. Or he'll probably mention in a minute. Or maybe Ken Holland, when he went over to Edmonton, said, I had him ranked higher, and I'm happy that I'm his GM now. Like, maybe he did do that. I don't know.
Okay.
Let's see. One more question. Looking.
Or not. We've got 1 hour and 46 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So Holland said he would have taken Bouchard over Hughes. And you got to, again, he is his GM now, so take that for what it's worth.
Oh yeah, that's
deniability.
That's like Brian Burke saying he'd take Morgan Riley #1 overall. It doesn't sound so bad now in that draft, but since the #1 overall was Yakupov. But anyway, okay,
we're done.
All right. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. Thank you to Peter Tessier, who in his wonky internet, it was tough. And we know that Anthony is dealing with thunderstorms in the Philadelphia area. So thank you, Anthony Mangione. Thank you, Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.